Welcome and good afternoon on Faith Speaks for WICX-FM 102.7, and we're happy to be back with you. It's been a little bit, but we're starting a new year out, and I'm very pleased to have with me today the Reverend Jason Wells, who's been my guest many times, and I just love having him come on. And he's also the president for the New Hampshire Council of Churches, and we were talking. He asked me yesterday about what we might talk about, and of course I know Epiphany just happened, and you do Epiphany, of course, in your churches, the Episcopal. And
yes.
My congregation, I think that they do them, but Catholic, we had ours on Saturday this last weekend, and you know it's really odd how TV has done this, because when you see Christmas, it sounds like the wise men all arrived the same night on Christmas Eve, that the shepherds were there and Mary gave birth to Jesus.
Right.
But yet, in reality, from what I've learned, talking with you and a few others, clergy, that the wise men came like a year or two later.
That is one thing that people have suggested. There's nothing in the scriptures that says when they arrived, so even 1 or 2 years later could be. I don't know that, but you're right. The way that we show that story in art, in TV, in movies, in the Rockettes Christmas show,
I know.
all of those things all take all of these stories. The angel Gabriel telling Mary that she will bear the child. She's pregnant for 9 months.
Yeah.
That she bears Jesus. The shepherds come. The wise men come. And we make it all into a 1 hour special.
I know.
As all of that gets compressed down into a movie or a TV show time span. And of course the scriptures don't tell the story that way. It is much more complex as you look at the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, where the wise men are only in Matthew and not in Luke.
Really?
The stories have different components. So even the story that we have is made of taking various parts of the Gospels, and we already put them together, and then we edit that further into the common picture that we have of what, at least I'll say, what sits in our dining room, which is a little nativity set with all the figurines all together.
I know, I love it.
So it's in that part of our art and our understanding of the nativity of Jesus.
But there was something that was mentioned, that the wise men went to his house. Went into a house.
Right,
and that's what made me question. I said, wait a minute here, house? So that's when I said, well, Jesus was probably 1 or 2 years old at least by that point or something. I don't know.
Because there's something different than the house, different from the inn, where there was no room at the inn with the manger in the back. So we do have these differences of words that people try to guess what the time frame is, but at least in the way that you were saying yesterday was January 6th, which is the day of Epiphany.
Yeah.
Which, the way that we celebrate them in terms of the church's holy days is different. It is more true to the biblical account. And so that's something that Roman Catholics, of course, do, but Christians, really any of the churches that keep holy days of any kind would recognize the Epiphany as happening 12 days after Christmas Day, so December 25th to January the 6th. Of those 12 days being the time within which the Magi or the wise men, the three kings, whatever way that we culturally look at what those people are, comes later. And whether that's 12 days literally or 2 years or a year, we won't know, but even the way that we spread out those holy days says it didn't all happen at once.
Well, and also too, Reverend, is that Jesus, we know very, very little about his childhood, because it seems like he goes from a baby right up to when he gets baptized by John the Baptist or something. We don't know anything about the teenage years or the youth.
There's very little in the biblical account.
Yeah, I know.
We know. Actually, on January 1st, if people went to Mass on January 1st, you would have heard the story, I believe, of the infant Jesus being taken to the temple and being circumcised in accordance with the law. which always happened 8 days after birth. So 8 days after December 25th is January 1st. So you hear that story. We hear right away of Herod wanting to find and kill Jesus. That's part of the story of the wise men.
Egypt.
So they go to Egypt. They become refugees in a sense, fleeing violence that was going to come. Returning when it's safe
to Nazareth.
After Herod dies. So you have a little bit of a sense of the time frame and the years that go by. And then there's the story of Jesus being lost at the temple. That Jesus is taken to the temple.
Yes, that's right.
And he becomes lost, and Mary and Joseph go back to find him, only to find that he's with the religious teachers. He's instructing the teachers of the law, and gives that famous phrase, "Did you not know I would be about my Father's business in the temple?" So we have some of those stories, but there are just a few things that we have up until his baptism around age 30. So we have a lot that's missing there.
I know, as I've told you, I've made my funeral arrangements already, and I got picked out the gospel, the readings, everything, and the gospel that I've got is the Christmas story. That's what I want. Right.
I've remembered you saying that's.
I've always loved Advent. That's my favorite time of the year. But I just, because I keep learning more things about, when she had the baby Jesus and all that. But I also you also sent me an email. I don't know if you did, but I think you did. But you've got coming up here a prayer cycle for January 12th, on Unity Sunday on January 26th, and then it says recovery training and more.
Yes.
And so the prayer cycle, what is that? And it said you've got some churches here.
Right.
But it says, I love this part. It says, and when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." And that was from Matthew. I love Matthew. I love Matthew's Gospels. I really do. And Luke somewhat too.
Yeah, so you've got the printout here. This is an email that we send out from the Council of Churches once a week, every Monday.
Yeah.
And part of what the Council of Churches does, we've talked about some of our activities before.
Yeah.
We have many events in there, programs, things that can train people for different kinds of ministry, recovery ministries in our churches and such. But the way that we work together as churches is in activities and ministries that we share, but it's also quite simply in prayer and in our worship. And that's what those things are about. So we do have a prayer cycle. As I've said here before, the Council of Churches is made up of 9 different denominations of churches. And if you add up all the individual churches in those 9 denominations, there's about 400 churches in the state of New Hampshire that are part of the council through their denominational membership.
Would you like?
I would love
cold,
a little bit of water. It does not matter. Thank you. I've got a little cough there.
I was going to say you haven't started smoking. I hope.
No, I'm not taking up smoking.
Not getting a cold.
So what we've done in the prayer cycle is at the top, the first thing on our email blast with all the events coming up, we put out a prayer list. So for every week of the year, there's about 7 or 8 churches on the list, and we go through them by town alphabetically. So I know the number 1 church is the United Church of Ackworth, because Ackworth comes first alphabetically.
Yeah.
And we go through them. I see Antrim is on the list for next week.
Yeah,
and I find a Bible quote that often has something to do with many of our churches. Almost many of them do celebrate some kind of liturgical year that is connected to the Catholic cycle as well. So if you go to Mass this Sunday, you will most likely hear the story of Jesus being baptized. So we're looking ahead to that. And I pull a quote from the lections for that Sunday.
Yes, I know.
Because many Protestant, not all, but many Protestant churches use a very similar lectionary to the Catholic Mass lectionary. So it's something that belongs to everybody. So we do have that prayer cycle. It's on our website. The whole list you can download. Our website is nhchurches.org. But if you do nhchurches.org/prayer 2020, you can download the whole list. I have it printed out, and I just have it for my personal prayers. When I have my daily prayer time, I read the Bible, I reflect on what I've read, and I've got my prayer list of people I'm praying for. And I pray for the churches that week. I like to be able to do that repeatedly throughout the week, to pray for their ministries, for their pastors, for the people who go to those churches. Even if I've never been there, but that's something people can add to their own spiritual life. So we want to support that, and to be supporting our congregations, not just with programs, but with prayer. And you also mentioned Unity Sunday that we put out there.
January 26th is a Unity Sunday. Now, what that is, that it says the week of prayer for Christian unity is coming.
Yes. So the week of prayer for Christian unity happens once a year, and it's organized through the World Council of Churches. So this is an international event that happens. And every year the week begins on January 18th and ends on January 25th.
Oh, wow.
For people who know the liturgical calendar really well, the 18th and the 25th are the conversion of St. Paul, and the confession of St. Peter. When Peter answers the question of Jesus, do you love me? And he says, yes, Lord, you know that I do. And Jesus gives him the commission to feed my sheep, to feed the flock.
Wow.
And the conversion of Paul when he comes to faith in Jesus. So something that unites all Christians, right? Our faith in Jesus Christ is bookended by that week. And so internationally, there is the Week of Prayer for Christian Unity. And we are here in New Hampshire. I know in New Hampshire, it's Martin Luther King weekend every year. People are doing things during that week, and it's often, if we've ever tried to plan some sort of special event during that week, it always gets snowed out. The World Council of Churches doesn't care about New Hampshire's weather, but it's bad weather. So we've encouraged this date for Sunday, January 26th, to be a Unity Sunday. So that the week before is hard, but we think January 26th. Again, on our website is nhchurches.org/unity2020.
Wow.
And the printout that's there has, if you're planning a worship service, there's music, there's suggestions about prayers you might use that Sunday, some resources to help make that happen, so you're not on your own to just schedule that. We give you some backup.
And it says you're asking congregations of our 9-member denominations, so that means you've got Catholic, Episcopal, Presbyterian, Baptist, Congregational, Anglican.
Well, you said Episcopalian, so not Anglican separately. I think missing from your list would be United Methodist.
Methodist, yes.
American Baptists, Quakers, and Unitarians. I think would be some that were missed. But
you don't know much about them.
Yeah, well, they historically were a major presence in New Hampshire. In the 1700s and 1800s were a large faction. They came to New England and New Hampshire specifically because they were avoiding persecution for their Quaker practices. But they are a lively faith in New Hampshire and are still very active in their activism. They were very big in working against the slave trade back in the 1800s and carry out their faith in very social ways still. They're a big force on that.
Just out of curiosity, this is off your list here, but are you going to Washington, D.C. for that Right to Life march?
I would not be. No, I'm not going to be able to go.
I know
there is a large... The Diocese of Manchester always has a strong contingent that goes. So I know some of the people who do.
Then on January 29th, you get the Holy Family, Migrant Family, prayer service at St. Anne's St. Augustine Catholic Church in Manchester. So that's different. And it says it will feature Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, and English, as well as special prayers for those who are suffering family separation. So.
Yeah. So this is the third time we've helped sponsor this prayer service at St. Anne St. Augustine, the parish, Capuchin parish in Manchester. Holy Family, Migrant Family draws a number of people of the many immigrant backgrounds. That parish has I've been to that parish. I've been attended mass there a couple of times, and in the back where ordinarily you'll find the parish bulletin or newsletter, and there is an English, French, a Spanish, and a Vietnamese version of it. They make 4 versions for their congregation, but this year, we look at that. We were actually just talking about this passage in the scriptures of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, the Holy Family. Yeah. Fleeing from Herod under the threat of violence and fleeing and being refugees in Egypt. So that's the story we want to tell. And we actually are working on having 2 people in New Hampshire, 2 Christian families who have immigrant stories that are not terribly different. They came to the United States fleeing violence in Asia or in Central America. And they're powerful stories when you hear about what their families went through in their home country and why they came here. And we hold that up in prayer and in song alongside the story of the Holy Family.
And you got a photo here. It says Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and left during the night for Egypt. Matthew 2:14. Yeah.
Right.
So I've read this over, and it's very interesting, very good. And then you got coming up here on Recovery Academy in Milford on January 17th to the 18th and 24th to the 25th. Then Martin Luther King, like you said, community celebration on January 20th. But it's very, and of course you got the clergy training in Concord on January 28th at the United Baptist Church. And again, this is because of all the violence that's happened across the country in churches, right?
Well, this event is for called Caring Clergy, and it's actually focused. It's one of the recovery ministries that we do. Yes. There are many churches that have recovery ministries in them. So there is in that email the Recovery Coach Academy, which any person can take. You can be a faith person or not. You can be a lay person or a clergy. Anybody can go to the Recovery Coach training, and there are many faith-based but also secular recovery programs, and that will enable you to have the skills to be a volunteer and to help people, to be a mentor to a person who's recovering from substance use disorder or drug addiction.
You've got that in. It says a training will include a presentation of substance use and addiction, sharing from parents whose children have struggled with substance use disorder, discussion of what makes this kind of funeral just like any other and makes it unique. And so
so specifically the Caring Clergy event, the Recovery Coach training is for everybody, but we do have an event that is specifically called Caring Clergy that is aimed at the reality that many of our pastors and priests have to do funerals for addiction and overdose deaths, related deaths, which is it is terrible, and clergy need to have the support and the skills to you'll be asked to get into a pulpit to say something and to be able to say things that are true to our faith but are also helpful to the family that survives, that are loving and kind. It is something that I attended there's a training back in the fall for this in Keene. It's a very powerful training, so if there are people who are involved in clergy who would want to have this kind of training, there will be one in Concord on January 28th, and that's on our website as well. Yeah.
So you don't mind if I put this in my town crier?
That would be fantastic too. Good. They're on our website. That we send them out in email blasts. They're on our Facebook and our Twitter feeds. We want the word out there. So
I'm more than happy to. So.
Yeah.
But other than that, you've been kind of busy with all the Christmas holiday there.
Right.
Now, and have you been preaching anywhere? Any churches have had you come in and do a sermon or something?
That for me, I do visit churches and preach around all over the state. That slows down for me around Christmas time. Actually, congregations, they want to hear from their priest or their pastor on Christmas. So I don't have a lot of church work to do on Christmas. For most clergy, that's the busiest. I say it's the World Series of church. It's the busiest time of the year. But for me, it slows down. But in November, I was on the road quite a bit. I was actually able to go to church service and preach at a service in Berlin, all the way up north.
Gosh, wow.
And actually, in Berlin, the Lutheran Church and the Episcopal Church decided they were going to have one worship service together.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like I said, that we express our unity in the work we do together, but we also express our Christian unity and our faith unity by worshiping and praying together. So it was a great opportunity to have one worship service with two congregations in town, and to be with them. But I'd also preach in Littleton, not far away, but Litchfield. So I go all over, and this coming Sunday I'll be at the Episcopal Church in Nashua. So any church out there who would like to invite me, I can be a guest preacher for them.
Wow.
As the invitations come in. So if there's a pastor or a priest out there who needs a break some Sunday, let me know. And if there's somebody in the pews who wants to take a break from their pastor preaching, they can call me and have me be the guest so they can get a breather from the usual.
The Salisbury Congregational Church is in need of a minister up there, bad.
Oh,
because
okay.
Carrie Richardson, who had been the pastor, has moved on, and they have nobody up there, so they've been trying to get guests to come in.
Yeah.
It's a small church, but they're very active up there. In
Right.
Salisbury, as my uncle goes to it. But you have, you've got what, a 9, how old's your daughter?
My daughter's 9 years old.
Is she 9?
Yeah.
So you are busy with her at Christmas too?
Oh, absolutely. The family demands are there for us, like they're for every family. But you bring up a good point. There are many towns in New Hampshire. This is something that is another area of interest for a council of churches, that it is a challenge for churches to find clergy, to find pastors who will sometimes move to a small church that may not have the resources, the money to pay someone or to attract a clergy person. It's something that is a challenge as I listen to denominational leaders, the Episcopal or Lutheran bishops or the Methodist superintendents or whatever the role is called in the different denominations. They're all having that challenge. We have small churches in small towns. I'm actually very excited to see the Episcopal Church is opening this year in Tilton a school for ministry. And that made some local news. Because I think they have an innovative solution, which is rather than the usual ministry track, is you send somebody. There are no seminaries in New Hampshire, so you send somebody to seminary far away. These days they take on a lot of debt to go to school, and if they have lots of debt, they can't come back to a town that can't pay much. So they've got a great thing moving forward that will train ministers and preachers and pastors here in New Hampshire, so you don't move away, you keep your job. They say they want it to work like the National Guard. What is it? 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, kind of a commitment, so you can have your career, your family life in place, and then have people who are able to minister in these churches. So I'm hoping that is successful, and I'm praying that as it develops, is something can open up to the other denominations, because it's something that a challenge we all share.
Well, I saw in the paper where Franklin is reopening their Episcopal church.
The old St. Jude's church in Franklin.
That's quite a story. And of course, in Salisbury's case, they've tried to combine Salisbury and Webster, and they said no. They want to keep their own up there, and so so that's the thing.
It's a very hard thing to merge churches. And I know in Concord here. Father Rich over at what is now Christ the King, he had his work cut out for him, and he has done an admirable job. He's a phenomenal priest over there with a big job. And I know he was up in Berlin before that.
Really?
It's now Holy Family Parish, I think. Or I forget the congregation, but he was part of merging the parishes there. It is hard work to do, to bring multiple church communities together like that.
There was a lot of dissension about Sacred Heart closing, and then St. Peter's now been torn down. Houses are being built there. But he has done fantastic. I went to a funeral here at Immaculate that he did, and I was just amazed at his homily, and his singing was out of this world. I never knew he sang it. Oh my gosh, he was just. I couldn't believe it. I said, "Wow, what a funeral this is!" He just did a nice job. But
But we are finding places where folks are doing the work that he's doing. I know the Episcopal churches in Plymouth and Ashland, they're not far from each other, but they've been working on merging for a little while now. It's difficult work, but people are doing that. And you mentioned St. Jude's a moment ago, and I'm very excited about that.
Bet you are.
Because there's a church that had really closed around the year 2000 or 2001, almost 20 years ago now, which is hard for me to believe that the year 2000 was a long time ago. But the church had closed. There was no congregation worshiping there for a long time, and I think it's a bold step. It's a great sort of moment of evangelization to bring the faith back to start more churches and more worshiping communities. And I hope that Pastor Kate there is successful in that work. I'm a fan of what those decisions there.
Someday I'm going to hear you preach. I would love to hear you give a homily. I think you would be fantastic.
Talk to Father Ray.
Oh, I will.
I don't know if he can get me in the pulpit here or not, but maybe I'll come for a nighttime program or something.
But if I remember right, your wife is Catholic, right?
Yes, that's absolutely
right.
right.
Your daughter's being...
Yeah, she was confirmed a little bit ago.
But I mean, I think you'd be fantastic. I've always respected you highly, and I just... Like I said, you're in my funeral plans.
That's what I've been told. Yeah.
Oh yes, you are. So I picked out my clergy, and you're one of them. So you and Jonathan both. But no, I think it's fantastic. They used to have in Concord pulpit exchange in January, late January.
Oh, okay.
And they would one Sunday they would go around to the different churches. Like you might go to St. Peter's, or you might go to United Baptist. Even the Salvation Army was in this. Somebody would go there and do a service, but they don't do it no more. So, well, we're getting this nice sign that we're coming down. So again, thank you for being here with Faith Speaks today, and it's nice to be back on the air. And we're expanding into Manchester and Nashua come spring. The diocese, yes, they brought 2 stations down there, and supposedly by June they're going to be on the air down in there with all our programming.
Good news.
So, yes. Well, with that in mind, thank you for coming on, Reverend Jason, and I always love having you here. And 440,000.
Be the reaching listeners.
Yeah,
wow.
So that'll be
You've
great.
hit the big time.
Well, you will, not me. You'll be the big time.
No, definitely come back for your next show.
Thank you to Brian, my director, and thanks again to Mike Bellino, who is always patient with us, and just take a moment and thank God for every day. Thank the Lord, because I'll tell you, my faith has been really tested the last few weeks. But with that in mind, have a great day.